For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. When He had been baptized, Jesus came up immediately from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to Him. And He saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting upon Him. And suddenly a voice came from heaven, saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And He was transfigured before them, and His face shone like the sun, and His clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to Him, talking with Him. And Peter answered and said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While He was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And suddenly a voice came out of the cloud, saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear Him." And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. It's midnight, and a darkness coupled with the gloom of a light fog has settled over our nation's capital. Gas lamps dot the streets where a unusual looking figure is darting from dark place to dark place. It is a man. He is oddly shaped because he is exceedingly tall. In fact, he's almost a foot taller than your average soldier. His arms and his legs are even longer than they should be, even given his unusual height. He is careful of the steps that he takes, and he stays in the darker shaded areas because he's a wanted man. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people that would give every dollar and everything they have to see this scoundrel hung by the neck from a rope. So he's careful where he is going. He has had a tough week, which is why he is going where he is going. He makes his way down the darkened street, avoiding the light given off by the gas lamps. At the end of the street is a large, thick brick wall that is covered in green ivy. He is careful, and he follows the green covered wall down a few hundred feet, coming to a place that he knows well. He puts his large hands up on the top of the wall, and this man in his 50s pulls himself up over this wall and lands on the other side. He's had a tough week. On the other side of the wall, if you didn't know any different, you might think somebody's figured out how to grow stones. Large stones of different shapes and sizes spring up out of the green grass in neat rows. He knows his way well. He's been here a few times before, even in the middle of the night. He makes his way weaving through the stones, going up a small hill where stands a 3-sided marble building. It's no bigger than a small shed. The 4th side is not marble. It is an iron gate. He takes out a small key and he opens the gate, and is careful to slowly open the gate as not to make any noise. He's had a tough week. He goes inside the gate and puts his back up against the back wall and slides down in between the back wall and the back of a large rectangular sarcophagus. It too is made of marble. Inside the sarcophagus is a small casket. Inside the casket is his 11-year-old son. He misses his beloved Willie. He misses him terribly, especially on hard weeks like this. He thinks about his little boy and how much hearing his laugh or even just his footsteps behind him would have meant to him that week. He buries his face in his palms and he begins to weep. It took William several weeks to die. Nobody was sure how he got sick, but once he got sick, there was no going back. This man had spent every waking minute by his son's side. It wasn't the first boy that he had lost either. not very many years before, he had lost Edward. But Edward was 3, and albeit it crushed him to lose Edward, he had Ed many more years with William. Willie was special. People knew Willie was special. He was just very, very bright. Such a kind little boy. He followed his daddy around whenever he could on official business and seemed to pay better attention than some of the people he did business with. He misses his Willie. Before he lost Willie, this man was known to be given to bouts of great depression. But since his little boy's death, he is known to have bouts of happiness. Melancholy and sadness are his norm. He has had a tough week. He wonders inside what he would give if he could talk to Willie and know that Willie was hearing him. It has devastated him so much to have lost his little boy. It bothered him to the point where he ordered that the sarcophagus be opened and the casket opened. When his little boy had died, a friend of his who was a doctor agreed to try a new embalming technique. Much to this man's somewhat joy, the technique worked. When the casket was open, he saw little Willie's face. The people that were with him just thought he could be sleeping. People don't know if it's true or not, but some say he actually reached down and pulled Willie out of the casket. He didn't do this once, he did it twice. He had Willie disinterred twice so he could see him. He begins talking, and he talks for a good hour and 45 minutes. At almost 2 o'clock in the morning, and he can no longer weep and has nothing else to say, he gets up. He takes a handkerchief from his coat, wipes his eyes and his face, wraps his index finger around, or wraps the handkerchief around his index finger and moistens it on his tongue and traces his son's name on the top of the sarcophagus. It's got dirt in it and he wants to clean it before he leaves. He traces his name, William Lincoln, 16th President of the United States. Leaves the mausoleum of his son, William. He locks the gate behind him, and Abraham Lincoln leaves the cemetery. He is much less careful on his way back to the White House. Unfortunately, the story I just told you is probably true, given some artistic license. When Abraham Lincoln's son died, it was more than he could bear. He had his body taken out of the sarcophagus and opened so that he could look at his little boy again. It is known that he, on a couple of occasions, snuck out of the White House and walked in the middle of the night to the cemetery and would spend hours talking with his son's body. He knew that it wasn't the same thing. He knew that it wasn't as though Willie could hear him. And it really didn't make him feel a whole lot better. But just the idea of knowing that he was there in some form soothed his pain just a little bit. He was supposed to have been buried in Springfield, Illinois, where Lincoln was from. But he couldn't bear the thought of his Willie being that far away from him. So he was buried 3 miles at Oak Hill Cemetery, 3 miles from the White House.